Let's talk about jobs. You've had them, I've had them, we've all had them. Some we absolutely love and some we just despise. Now, you might be watching this and maybe you currently have a job, but you want to change. Maybe you're curious what else is out there. Or maybe you don't have a job right now and want to hear what other people have to say about their jobs before you go out and start pursuing something. Well, hey, either way, you've come to the right place. See, I figure to help you out and to provide some entertainment at the same time, why not rank all the things I've done for money and see what the real deal is about? Right? Let's get started. It's pretty obvious that acting is going to be S tier because of one word: residuals. What are those? Well, every time an episode of TV or a movie is watched, whether bought online, on an airplane, around the world, an actor is paid for it. The luckiest you can be as an actor is if you land a good role on a TV show that plays on some channel, I don't know, and does like a gazillion seasons and is sold around the world. You could probably live the rest of your life off that money. I mean, the money, the celebrity treatment, the free things, the fun and excitement of making movies, it's a no-brainer. That's why there's so many people that are willing to uproot everything and everyone and try their luck at making it. I would say, though, that the only hard part about being an actor is getting the job, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other people that are all auditioning for the same role. And guess what? They could decide that they actually want someone with blue eyes, and yours are brown. So, sorry. Better luck next time. At the end of the day, though, acting has a special place in my heart. It has made me the most money of all the jobs I've done, and it was my favorite experience so far, and it's also probably, arguably, the easiest job in the world. So, S tier, without a doubt. So I worked as a waiter at an Italian restaurant in Paris for a summer. Trust me, not as sexy as it sounds. See, in America, waiters typically work for tips, and if you work at a fancy restaurant, you could be taking home a couple hundred in tips on a good night. Not the case in France, no. See, the French don't have a tipping culture, so I'd be lucky if people left their loose change on the table for me. No, instead the French waiters get paid around minimum wage. For example, I got paid 10 euros an hour, working about 8 to 10 hours a day, which system is better? I don't know. I haven't experienced the American one, but my experience, thankfully, was actually quite enjoyable. I was lucky enough that I worked with my extended family, so things were pretty fun and lax. However, the food service industry is absolutely grueling. You are constantly on your feet, running back and forth, carrying heavy hot plates of food, burning yourself, cutting yourself, getting yelled at, cleaning up messes, I don't know, you name it. There are way better and easier jobs, obviously. It's definitely a starter job, something you do for quick money or for a short while, and it definitely builds character. But hey, if you want to be a waiter, be a waiter. Would I be a waiter again? If I needed to, I would. Do I want to be a waiter again? No, not really. So I'm going to put this one, I think it feels comfortable at a C tier. When you think of a stylist, you usually think about someone who works with cool clothes, who makes celebrities and models look good, and is always working on like cool photo shoots for magazines, or working on music videos, red carpets, I don't know, you name it, right? And while most of that is true, there is a lot of grunt work that goes on behind the scenes, and that is where the Stylist Assistant comes in. If you're curious, I do have some videos posted on my channel of me doing some jobs, showing basically how it is working on these jobs and these sets, explaining what it is that it really happens. Anyways, basically, what a stylist assistant is in charge of is doing the pickups and returns for brands. I basically just hustle around town picking up bags or boxes of clothes and lug them wherever they need to go until I eventually bring them back or ship them to wherever else they need to go. Now, Most of the jobs I got were pretty easy to find, and I started rather quickly with no experience, honestly. I found most of them off Instagram, just following popular stylists, and just waited for them to post on their stories, looking for help. I also used an app called Nova, and that's just a creative freelancer gig work kind of app. But 80% of the jobs I've done were unpaid. They did cover my expenses, but I made no money from it. It's just working for credit. And, the workload, it varies drastically. Sometimes I've only had a couple hours work and like 3 deliveries. And then sometimes I've spent days running around town and lugging things left and right. I will say that is a great way to start in fashion. And you do get the chance to build a cool portfolio of great work and meet tons of people and contacts for the future, if that's what you want to work in. However, since it is a lot of manual labor and is generally unpaid, I have to put it at B tier. Great entry-level job, easy to find with lots of potential, but at the cost of working hard for free. Up next, dog sitter. Kind of self-explanatory. People pay you to take care of their dog or cat for either a couple hours or it could be days, depends. If you like being around animals or taking care of animals, this one's definitely for you. I grew up with a dog for most of my life. I also took care of other people's dogs growing up, so I kind of had a lot of experience with animals and doing this, so I felt comfortable, If you're interested, there's an app called Rover where you can make a profile and find people who need a sitter. Now, I've had a pretty stable gig with a certain dog and have really enjoyed it, honestly. The only reason I'm not putting this one in the S tier is because sometimes you can come across a tough case. Either the dog is absolutely psycho or the owner is. And the other reason being that you are, fundamentally responsible for a life, which, hey, in extreme scenarios like the dog getting hit by a car or stolen, you are responsible. And that could be a burden, But for the most part, it's easy money. In fact, most of the time when I'm doing it, I get my editing or my writing done, my homework, whatever it is. So it's like a 2-for-1, This one is kind of a no-brainer. Now, I'm aware that modeling isn't exactly a job that is accessible to everyone, but I was lucky enough to experience what it was like for a while. In fact, it was my first ever job that paid me. Shout out to Hot Topic. But let's talk about the reality of it. Yes, it is very cool and exciting to be paid to be hot. And there are plenty of upsides to this job, such as being able to travel and see new places, good pay for easy work, meeting cool and interesting people, and just the overall experience of being a part of the fashion world. And for that, I'm going to have to put it at A tier, And the reasons why I'm not putting it at S tier are zero job security. You never know when your next job is going to be or when you'll get paid. You could be let go at any moment from a job or your agency. And there's no longevity. There are a few models who go on to model successfully for their entire lives. Most do 1 to 3 years of good work and then basically disappear off the face of the planet and go off and do something else. Hey, there's shady people. Plenty of shady people. I mean, there's plenty of stories of models having horrible times with creepy photographers, agents, bookers, you name it. People tend to think of these models as, these hot but stupid creatures that you can just tell them what to do and get away with anything. And because, fashion has this super huge gray area. I don't know. Stay away from those people, okay? That being said, I had a great time as a model. Hey, I'm not going to knock it, and I highly recommend it if you can get it. Just be safe. In movies and TV, photographers are always seen as like a sexy, cool job. They live in giant artist lofts in New York City, and they sleep with only 10s. In reality, most of the time, photographers make close to nothing. Unless you're shooting the huge campaigns for the mega brands, you're doing a lot of free work for magazines and events. Most photographers, they make their money doing the not so sexy work, like weddings or business portraits or product photography. It's also not uncommon for photographers to use their position to be creeps and predators, like taking nude photos of chicks for their art book. Being a photographer's assistant can be a great experience to learn, get a handle on things. You might also run into psychos, but it's pretty easy work, and sometimes it even pays. I realized pretty quickly that photography was not really my thing. It can be stressful to come up with ideas and direct people, all while figuring out the mechanics of lighting and aperture and this and that. And I don't know. I put photographer and photographer's assistant together. I'm kind of lumping them in because I think they're super similar. This is one of those jobs where everyone has their own artistic style and work ethic, so it varies. From my experience, you really gotta love taking photos to make a career as a photographer, and it also helps to know the mechanics of photography. Cameras, film versus digital, post-production, all of that. It's kind of expected, but with everyone and their mother owning a camera now, the price has dropped, and you may be taking on other positions to get a shoot done. You might even need other side jobs to make a living. So for that, I'm gonna have to go with B tier. Screenwriting, my dream job. Getting paid to lay in bed and write stories all day, and then getting residual/royalty checks in the mail for your ideas. I mean, is there anything better than that? The problem is that it feels almost impossible to even get the job in the first place. See, I was lucky enough to sell even just one script before the age of 30. You see, in Hollywood, there's this idea that being a good writer comes with age. So many people don't take younger screenwriters as seriously as older ones. And on top of that, getting representation is a catch-22. You technically have to get your script in front of agents or managers or producers, whatever, but you can't send it to them directly as they don't accept unsolicited material. So you either worm your way up to someone who can make an introduction, or you get lucky and win a competition and are plucked out of the crowd. But winning a screenwriting competition and having your script produced and made is the equivalent of winning the lottery, I would say. Most writers just end up in a writer's room with a bunch of other writers coming up with ideas like, who should be the next heroin addict in Riverdale? I don't know. Despite all that, I still think it deserves a spot in S tier. Easy. Selling things online. Now, I know what you're thinking. Charlie, selling your junk online doesn't count as a job. And for the most part, you're right. But it becomes a job when you start selling other people's junk. Now, I've sold all kinds of things. I mean, from clothes to vinyl records, cameras, guitars, Magic the Gathering cards, Warhammer minis, random junk, you name it. And for the most part, what they say is true. One man's trash is another man's treasure. But let's be honest, this job is pretty low effort. All you really have to do is just take a couple pictures of your stuff, post it on eBay or Depop, and pack it up and ship it when it sells. There is a little cost that comes into play when you start needing packing materials, but overall it's quite minimal. However, in order to do this, you really have to want to sell your things, because if you felt like you've bonded with them, it can be hard to get rid of it. And I'll be honest, this one kind of borders between A tier and B tier. When I was only selling stuff that I already had, it was great. And I was fast at shipping. I didn't have to go anywhere besides the post office. And I was actually happy to get rid of things that I didn't want anymore. It's only when I tried looking for things to sell beyond what I already had that it started sucking. And I experimented with the whole digging through bins of clothes at the Goodwill or whatever, and I never got that rush, that treasure hunter rush that people get. And that moment where you find a hidden gem that's priced to the floor and you can flip it for a huge profit, that was just not for me. I don't know. I don't have the stamina for that, nor the devotion, but most of the things I found, ended up selling for around what I got them for. Otherwise, they would have just been rotting in a box, honestly. So maybe it's just a skill issue for me, but I'm gonna put this one at B tier just because I liked it. It was easy, and anyone could do it basically. Before I get into this one, I'm not a financial expert or professional, and this isn't financial advice whatsoever. Blah 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 blah. Just to cover my ass. Anyways. Back in 2020, 2021, you may have been lucky enough to receive the coveted economic stimulus checks. And if you're an idiot like me, you gambled it all away. Boy, what a mistake. I already know I'm going to have the whole mouth-breathing crypto scammers telling me otherwise, but the truth is that trading isn't as easy as they make it sound. See, for someone like me who failed algebra and barely made it through geometry, numbers and charts kind of go over my head. Instead, I was trading based off of vibes only. I would look at a company, read up on the news, and decide if I felt a good vibe. And in all honesty, it kind of worked. But why am I putting it in D tier, you may ask? 2 reasons. 1, you can lose money just as fast as you can make it. And 2, the stress is not worth it. So, for example, when I was leverage trading crypto, I could probably make, $500 in 5 minutes. But I could also lose $1,000 in 10. And unlike the regular stock market that opens and closes, the crypto market basically runs 24/7. And it got to a point where I was losing sleep over this, and I could feel my hair falling out all over the place just from the stress alone. So in my opinion, going bald over a couple $100 is not worth it. D tier. Have you ever walked by a party or a club where an event was happening and there's a line, and you see this person at the front of the line with a clipboard and maybe like a headset and a mean mug? That's a PR person. Now, while my experience wasn't exactly like that, I was in charge of letting people into an event based on an RSVP list. I also helped set up and clean the event space, but for the most part, that was my main job. And to be honest, I rather enjoyed it. I was paid pretty well for it. I got to partake in the event a bit, and I didn't have to deal with any nutcases. Now, I'm sure there are times where, it can be an absolute zoo with people like crowding and shouting and fighting at you trying to get in or whatever. I don't know. Now, I haven't had that much experience doing this, but for what I had to go through, it was a total breeze, honestly. This is also one of those jobs where I could see myself pursuing it further as a career later in life. And I'd like to get into the event and party throwing space myself at some point. So for that, I'm going to give PR assistant A tier. See, Upwork is an interesting website. Much like Fiverr and other freelance job sites, you can find all kinds of stuff on there. I usually stuck to the writing side, and sometimes the photography section. Here are some favorites that I've collected along the way. It's a shady place, and I ended up writing fake reviews for things like moving companies and storage unit places that had, really bad ratings to boost their engagement, I suppose. I was paid $5 for 2 posts, but I had to stop eventually because I ran out of throwaway emails. I also fell for a money laundering, fake income check scam there too. Basically, what happened is I found a posting for audio transcription, which is just typing out what is said in a video into a document, and that was paying around $45 an hour. I know, the first red flag, but I was desperate. Anyways, they responded and they said they were interested in having me take a timed test. Afterwards, they said that I needed to buy a separate work computer and that they would send me the money. So I guess at this point, I thought I had the job. So they sent me a check for $2,500, and I did notice that it looked a little funky, but like I said, I was desperate, so I didn't care. They told me to deposit the check, I think electronically, and then sell it to another bank account that would purchase the computer and send it to me. Looking back on it, I don't know how I fell for it. Anyways, I got lucky because my bank flagged the transfer and stopped it from going through. The scammer got real impatient and asked if I had another bank or another way to send the money, but I didn't. That's when I ended up catching on, and I called my bank. They took the money back, and I thankfully didn't have any problems except like paying a $12 fee or something. So, moral of the story is, if it's too good to be true, it usually is. And that these sites are riddled with scams and cheaters and liars and all the worst types of people. So I probably won't get sponsored by them anytime soon. But yeah, F tier for sure, definitely. Next up, production assistant. Now, for those of you who don't know what this job is, basically it's just being a set goon. Whether it's for fashion showrooms or photo shoots, film sets, live production, it's all basically the same. You lug things around, you fetch things for people, you do all the things that they don't want to do, basically, or have the time to do. But on the flip side, sometimes you get to work with fun, creative people and be a part of something cool or exciting. It's also a great way of starting out in the business, depending fashion, entertainment, either one. It gives you a rare opportunity to look behind the scenes and get a good idea of how things go down, who does what, you learn a lot. However, I'm still gonna have to squeeze this one into C tier, mainly due to how heavy the workload can be and that the pay is pretty low. I've even done jobs for free sometimes. You also have a high chance of running into horrible people who treat you like dirt, basically, because you're basically at the bottom of the totem pole. But all in all, it can be a slog, but it's a necessary first step for many in the entertainment fashion career. So, hey, you don't really have a choice. Last but certainly not least, we have content creator, which is my most current and recent professional endeavor, which means that I'm kind of still new at this and figuring things out. That being said, from what I've seen and heard, there is a lot of money that can be made, but it is a tough market to break into. For the most part, content creators, they kind of have a bad reputation, and most of them deserve it. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's the money and attention that gets to their heads, and they end up being ruthless or exploiting people for content or just being straight up criminals. I don't know. But there's also this concept that content creation is like, quote, not a real job, which is true and not entirely true at the same time. See, from my understanding, it can be a job if you treat it like a job. If you treat it like a hobby, then it'll always be a hobby. And I think people who don't take it seriously, it's because for a good first chunk of time in the beginning, you're not making any money. In fact, in the past 2 years, I've only managed to make a whopping $50 on my content. Up until recently, in the past 3 months, did I start making decent money. But for the most time, it was zero. I was doing it just for fun, honestly. But despite it can be hard work sometimes, I don't know. It depends on what kind of person you are. But yeah, there's not much money at the start, but it's a lot of fun. And I love the freedom of being your own boss, making your own schedule, coming up with ideas and just letting them loose, doing whatever you want. And at the end of the day, you are technically responsible for your own success. So the harder you work at it and build it, the more you'll see it grow. And for that, I'm going to have to put this one in A tier. Now, I'm aware that some of these jobs are rather specific to a certain field or industry, but I hope that this video provided you with a little bit of insight, maybe. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, because who knows, maybe I'll work some other jobs and make a follow-up to this one. I don't know. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Adios.